As with most personal histories, my path to artificial life was somewhat meandering and serendipitous. When I first arrived at university in 1980, I was very interested in anything related to artificial intelligence, and I immediately set about learning everything I could about AI as it was practiced at the time. However, I became increasingly disillusioned with the limitations of the reigning symbolic approach to AI, and by the time I started graduate school in 1985, I was actively searching for alternatives. After a great deal of reading and thinking, I eventually settled on the strategy of replacing classical AI's approach of trying to replicate narrow, high-level human microcompetencies with modeling the complete behavioral repertoires of simpler whole animals. Thus, I was well primed when I came across an announcement for the first artificial life meeting organized by Chris Langton at Los Alamos National Labs, which I attended in 1987. The people and work I encountered there were deeply inspiring and really helped me to solidify my thesis research direction. After returning, I threw myself into my first A-Life project, in which I implemented a simulated artificial insect whose environment, body, behavior, and nervous system were directly drawn from the biological literature. This eventually became the basis for my 1989 PhD dissertation and subsequently led to a long line of research on trying to understand the mechanisms of animal behavior through the evolution and analysis of model brain-body environment systems, a research program that continues to this day. Most definitions of life focus on either its molecular components, for example, proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids, or its observed characteristics, for example, growth, reproduction, and evolution. But the Chilean biologists Humberto Maturana and Francisco Varela argued that neither of these definitions is wholly satisfactory. The components approach seems to be too specific to terrestrial biochemistry as we currently understand it, while the characteristics approach makes definitional properties that are clearly secondary. For example, even though reproduction is important, a sterile animal is obviously still alive. Instead, they suggested that we should conceive of life as a particular kind of organization of production processes, which they termed autopoietic, meaning self-creating. Imagine a factory, all of whose production activities are oriented toward generating and maintaining that very factory, rather than some external product. This is exactly what Maturana and Varela say a living system is, a factory that makes itself. Maturana and Varela argued that all biological phenomena could be derived from this core notion. Unfortunately, their framework is rather complicated and subtle, and being only verbally expressed, imprecise, and therefore open to differing interpretations. For that reason, I've been exploring these ideas in a universe much simpler than our own, John Conway's Game of Life cellular automaton. The game of life is a two-dimensional array of binary cells whose states change over time according to a local rule. This simple system can produce incredibly rich behavior. I like to think of this cellular automaton as a kind of physics, which gives rise to a simple spatial chemistry, which in turn supports emergent individuals, which finally engage their environments and one another in a rich variety of interactions. Thus, this toy model universe allows us to study the entire chain of emergence, from physics to chemistry to biology to behavior, and to rigorously develop and apply Maturana and Varela's framework for understanding this chain. A little over 10 years ago, the Nobel laureate Sidney Brenner wrote, "Biological research is in crisis. Technology gives us the tools to analyze organisms at all scales, but we are drowning in a sea of data and thirsting for some theoretical framework with which to understand it. Although many believe that more is better, history tells us that least is best. We need theory and a firm grasp on the nature of the objects we study to predict the rest." It's this need for a true first principles theory of biological individuals and the phenomena that they generate that I think is the most fundamental problem in biology. We need a theory that explains what biological individuals are and helps us to understand their constitution, their origin, their transformation in evolution, development, and learning, and their interactions with their environments and with one another. With its much broader perspective, this is a problem that I think A-Life is well placed to make progress on. I've already described my own approach to tackling this problem, but many other approaches can, should, and are also being explored.